Behind every empowered woman stands the strength of her tribe, in particular, other women. If you are ready to explore the beauty, power, and freedom in sisterhood, then I invite you to join me on a brief journey through today's episode. Welcome to the Yes to You podcast, where we empower women to manifest their vision of happiness and success with down-to-earth practical guidance for conscious living, personal growth, and entrepreneurship. Our goal is to see you take inspired action by saying yes to your calling. I'm your host and founder of RohiniWellness.com, Dominique D. Wilson. And now, let's get into the topic of the hour. Welcome to episode 10 of the Yes to You podcast. Today's topic is a very exciting one for me, and I am thrilled to bring it to you because I've been longing to talk about this for a while, and that is the beauty and power in sisterhood. Now, as a person with sisters of my own, I know firsthand how powerful it is to have sisterhood in your life, whether you are biologically related or not. I want to start with a quick question, and that is, what does sisterhood mean to you? I'd love it if you go over to social media and post your answer to this question. What does sisterhood mean to you? And be sure to include hashtag yes to you so that I can find your answer, because I'd love to know what your take is on this topic. I firmly believe that behind every empowered woman stands the strength of her tribe, in particular, the women. When I think of sisterhood, I not only think of sisters and friends, but I also think of my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, all the women who have come before me, who have given of their time, their love, their service to help me be who I am today. And what I've come to know is that the narrative of the strong, independent woman is not nearly as powerful as the interdependent woman who has the strength of her sisters, of her tribe, powering her forward through connection, growth, and support. So in this episode, I'll be sharing with you some of the benefits of sisterhood for your body, mind, and soul. Then we'll talk about some barriers to sisterhood, some of the things that might be standing in the way. And finally, some ways that you can overcome those barriers and start to embrace this idea of sisterhood and create meaningful friendships that enrich your life. And speaking of sisterhood, I would like to give a quick shout out to Pam Brown, who I met just this week on social media. And she left me a beautiful comment. She said, "I discovered your podcast just yesterday. Wow, greatness." Pam, I just wanted to say thank you for the feedback. I'm so glad that we connected and that you're finding value in the content that I create. And furthermore, I'm grateful to all of my listeners for tuning in and listening to the podcast. When you get a chance, please be sure to share this episode on social media using hashtag yes to you so that other women can hear this message and also be inspired. And of course, I will give you a shout out on a future episode. Furthermore, if you have a question, if you have feedback or ideas for a future topic for the show, be sure to email me at feedback@yes2upodcast.com. So with that, let's get ready to have an amazing discussion on the beauty and power of sisterhood the moment we return from this short break. Body, mind, spirit. This is your weekly wellness tip. This week's wellness tip is on interpersonal communication, and it's inspired by a book written by Dr. Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages. The basic premise of the book is this: each of us has a way of communicating and expressing our love to one another, and Dr. Chapman's broken that down into 5 of what he calls love languages. And depending upon the degree to which we understand and validate one another's love languages, that will determine how full our love tank, as he calls it, is. So, understanding the 5 love languages is very important for any relationship, be it an intimate relationship, a friendship, a working relationship, a partnership of some sort, or a familial relationship. Now, each of us uses all 5 love languages. However, according to Dr. Chapman, We all have a primary love language, and this is the one that kind of dominates the way that we express and receive love. So here are the 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. If your primary love language is words of affirmation, then you'll value things like verbal compliments, encouraging words, kind words, words of forgiveness, humble words. Words will have a large effect on the way that you relate to other people. And also, on the flip side, if you're dealing with someone whose primary love language is words of affirmation, then it's very important that you be mindful of what you say to them, because your words are going to have a lot more of an impact than per se a gesture. Moving on to the second love language. If your primary love language is quality time, then you will value togetherness, quality conversations, being able to reveal yourself and have that expression of emotion in conversation, and also learning about different personality types. Now, if you are dealing with someone whose primary love language is quality time, then your presence is going to be much more valuable than any compliment you could ever give them or any gift you might ever give them. Your actual presence, being with them, is what's really going to make them feel loved. And of course, in relationships, we have 2 things that keep this balanced. One is communication and the other one is compromise. So the more you know about the love languages, the more empowered you'll be to create and maintain a healthy relationship. Now let's talk about the third love language, which is receiving gifts. If your primary love language is receiving gifts, then gift giving is very fundamental to the way that you express and receive love, because the gift is a symbol for the thought, the fact that you are thinking about this person. So it doesn't really matter if the gift costs money, if it's something that's made or found. It's the gesture that counts and the reason behind the gift. With that said, if you are dealing with a person whose primary love language is gift giving and yours is not, it's important that you work on your ability to incorporate some type of gift giving. It doesn't have to be all the time, but here and there in the relationship, so that other person feels valued in a way that's most meaningful and authentic to them. Now let's talk about the fourth love language, which is acts of service. If your primary love language is acts of service, then it will just come natural to you to seek to please other people by serving them through thoughtful planning, putting your time and effort and energy into deeds. With that said, you're going to value service a lot more than if someone gave you a gift or gave you a compliment. It doesn't mean that you don't value the other expressions of love. It just simply means that when someone demonstrates an act of service, you feel elated, you feel valued. It's just natural, because it's literally like they are communicating to you in that special language that is programmed into the way that you perceive and also the way that you behave. So I invite you to pay attention to your relationships and start trying to gain a better understanding of where different people in your life fall on this spectrum. So that brings us to the fifth and final love language, which is physical touch. If your primary love language is physical touch, then touch is going to be a fundamental expression of love that meets a very biological need within you. This is holding hands, kissing, hugging, a back rub, sexual intimacy. All of these are different ways to communicate emotional love to a person whose primary love language is physical touch. And of course, there are receptors all over the body, so physical touch does not have to be sexual in nature. If you haven't already, I highly recommend that you add The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman to your reading list. You can find that on my recommended resource list at rohiniwellness.com/books. And as a bonus resource, Dr. Chapman has created a 5 Love Languages quiz that you can take absolutely free at 5lovelanguages.com/profile. Of course, I will include all of the resources I've mentioned in this episode in the show notes. So if you're on the go right now, be sure to come back at a later time to yes2upodcast.com and check out the show notes for episode 10. And now let's get back to the show. Welcome back to the show. As I said, today we are talking about the beauty and power of sisterhood. I mentioned briefly earlier that I grew up in a big family. I was one of 6 children and 4 of us were girls. So I have learned about sisterhood in and out from different perspectives. I have 1 older sister and 2 younger sisters. Over the span of my life, I've had many mentors, many friends. I've had so many different experiences with powerful people who have influenced me. But if I had to boil it down to the one person who's left the biggest impact on me, it would be my older sister, Crystal. To me, Crystal was the greatest example of unconditional love and real, genuine sisterhood growing up. And to this day, I still aspire to embody more of the beautiful qualities that Crystal brought into my life. Not only did she do the typical big sister stuff, right? Looking after me, taking care of me. But more than that, she was the one person who I could go to and talk to about anything, no matter what, and never feel judged or awkward. She knew how to validate, to uplift, to inspire. So that's just a little bit about my big sister, Crystal, and a little bit about my foundation in sisterhood and where my perspective is coming from. Another powerful example of sisterhood in my life was back in 2012 when I was going through a very difficult divorce. It was a very chaotic time in my life. And although I had relatives that lived in the same general location as me, I was thousands of miles away from my sisters and my immediate family, the people who I grew up spending the most time around. But one thing I did was to cultivate beautiful relationships and friendships where I was living. So fast forward to that season of my life where things were just kind of breaking down, falling apart, falling away. I was going through this divorce. I was extremely depressed. I was isolating. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to hang out with friends. I was just really feeling crushed by this shift in my entire paradigm. And you know who came through at that time in my life? All of the women came through. My aunt was there for me to lift me up and empower me and to remind me of who I was and to still see me as competent and capable and to not allow me to fall into victimhood. I had a beautiful circle of friends at the time. They would come over and knock on the door and say, "Hey, come to our house. Let's sit and collage and have wine and chocolate together." Or let's watch a movie together. The women in my life came through to say, "You know what? I know you're going through something horrible right now, but we are not going to let you fall into this pit and get stuck. We will hold the space for you until you can hold it for yourself." And that changed my life. It didn't just change my life, it saved my life. So I've learned through my experiences of growing up in a big family, but also cultivating relationships outside of my house, not just acquaintances, but real, authentic friendships, the beauty and the power of sisterhood and what we can do when we come together and support one another. So now I want to move into talking a little bit about the benefits of sisterhood, and I'm talking about actual health benefits. In 2 separate studies, one by Stanford and one by UCLA, researchers found that bond of sisterhood actually increases serotonin and the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is a very powerful hormone of love and bonding. It's what creates that magic between mother and child. So that's oxytocin, and the release of that love and bonding, that powerful hormone, is stimulated by sisterhood when you are around your sister friends. Furthermore, they found that in times of stress, although women may undergo a fight or flight response, they also release oxytocin. So think about the benefits of that. When you are under a lot of stress, you release oxytocin, this love and bonding hormone. One reason for that could be self-preservation and protection, right? There's protection when you have greater numbers, but also for connection. Connection is so important, especially when it comes to decreasing our stress levels and being able to live a life that is fulfilling and peaceful and loving and free. So now let's talk a little bit about what are some of the barriers to sisterhood. And I'll focus on 3 in particular. One is time, the second one is mindset, and the third is the way we communicate. Nowadays, it is very common for a seeming lack of time to be stated as the number one reason why we don't take that action to build those relationships and connect with our sisters. As we get older, as we get busier and our responsibilities increase, so does our need to establish and maintain those bonds with other like-minded women. Let's face it, we all have a need to feel nurtured, supported, and validated. Loneliness is a real thing, but it's not just any kind of loneliness. It's pathological loneliness. Now, this actually came up in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry, where they discovered that the perception that you are alone can actually create more damage than loneliness itself. And of course, loneliness is not reflected by the number of people you have around you. It's how deep and meaningful and authentic the connection is between you and those people. As women, our ability to experience vulnerability, intimacy, and openness in our relationships with one another is not only crucial to our psychological well-being, but also our physiological well-being. The bottom line is pathological loneliness, feeling isolated emotionally, can actually lead to health problems. So lack of time can be a pretty big barrier to sisterhood. Another barrier to sisterhood can be mindset. Depending upon the blueprint, the paradigm, the framework that you grew up with for how to relate to other women, you may or may not feel so inclined to cultivate and maintain relationships with other women outside of a transactional setting. Many of us grew up in a very competitive mindset, an atmosphere that taught us we should be competing with other women. This has been reflected for years in the magazines, the music, the fashion industry. There was this massive agenda of women competing against one another, but now it is so awesome to see those walls coming down. We as women nowadays on a global scale are learning the value of sisterhood. You may have noticed some of the popular hashtags going around social media now, such as community over competition or collaboration over competition, sisterhood over competition. As female entrepreneurs are now banding together, realizing that 2 brilliant minds together can do even more amazing things than the one alone. So that's mindset. The third barrier to sisterhood is communication. The way we communicate. Most of us don't grow up with a thorough education in how to communicate with other people. One of the reasons I chose the 5 love languages as our wellness topic for this episode is because it is so imperative that we learn how to not only talk to people, but how to understand differing perspectives so that we can see the beauty and the value in what other people bring to the table so that we can feel free in our relationships and comfortable with showing up in a way that is authentic to us while at the same time creating greater harmony as a whole. Social isolation these days is a real problem. We are more connected than any other time in human history. With the internet, social media, smartphones, you can connect with anybody anywhere, literally within seconds. And yet we are more emotionally isolated, socially isolated, and disconnected from one another than we've ever been. Now, technology is beautiful. It gives us the tools to connect with people all over the world and the potential for greater relationships if we maintain a healthy relationship with the technology itself. And of course, social media and technology is not the only thing to blame for this social isolation. In general, many of us live very far away from our family of origin, so it's important to cultivate sisterhood wherever you go. As I was saying earlier when I was going through that divorce, having that community of other women to build me up when I was falling apart is the one thing that kept me going, and furthermore, it's what inspired me to wake up, to answer my calling and realize that I am here to empower other women through building community by sharing my story, through the wisdom I've gained and by speaking up using my voice. So when it comes to that pathological loneliness, this is not just a woman problem. This is an everyone problem. Most people nowadays simply feel more alone. So those are some of the barriers to sisterhood: time, mindset, and the way we communicate. So now that we've discussed some of the amazing benefits of sisterhood, we've talked about some of those barriers, I want to move into how we can overcome those barriers and talk about how you can embrace sisterhood and start creating those meaningful relationships in your life step by step. The first step is to make sisterhood a priority. This was a huge aha moment for me because looking back at the way that I grew up, my family started a business when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and all my life growing up, the priorities were work and school. Everything else came secondary. That included any extracurricular activities, hanging out with friends. It was about family, work, and education. And I didn't realize growing up that I had created a mindset that friendship and sisterhood is kind of a luxury. It's a thing you do if you have time after you've done your work. I didn't understand that cultivating those relationships was important and a part of my social development. Instead, I thought friendship was something you did for fun, like watching TV, but that it wasn't really important. What was most important was work, school, family. And although I value my friendships, I love my friends, I enjoy being around people, I can honestly say that for the bulk of my life, I did not place a heavy emphasis on sisterhood because I simply didn't understand the value of it. So that's why I really want to drive this point home. Make sisterhood a priority. Friendship is not some luxury or something you do when you have downtime. Friendship is a part of survival. It's a part of who you are. It's a part of what helps you to learn about yourself and to stay connected. We need each other physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. Friendship is not a luxury. Sisterhood is not a luxury. It is a need. So make it a priority. Schedule some girls' nights out. Go to lunch, grab coffee. Make sure that you prioritize those relationships. The second thing you can do is be proactive. Don't sit around and wait for your friends to invite you out to things. Be the one to make the first move. Ask a woman in your network to go grab coffee or lunch with you. Make the first move and start cultivating that relationship. The third thing you can do is to connect organically. A lot of times we connect with our family, our friends, our sisters through text messaging or through social media. And although it's helpful to have those quick exchanges back and forth, it does not compare to using your word sound power. Pick up the phone and call your sisters, call your friends, hear their voice, let them hear your voice and have that connection. It is very different. And so if calling people feels awkward to you, just understand that we've had social media as kind of an epicenter for the way we communicate with other people for a while now. And we've just gotten used to a different way of communicating. But it's okay to go back to those old-fashioned methods. Push yourself. Choose one woman in your network. Just one this week. Pick the phone up and call her. You can make it a 3 to 5 minute conversation and allow yourself to have that connection. And the fourth thing that you can do is link up with some like-minded women who are into the same things and inspired by the same things that light you up. This power circle is going to help you to stay motivated and focused on achieving your goals, especially if you are an entrepreneur. Even if you haven't started your business yet, being around other women entrepreneurs is what's going to help to pull and propel you forward to start taking action on your goals and also elevating your mindset so that you can become the type of woman who gets what she wants and who makes things happen in her business. Now, the key word here is like-minded. Another great benefit of surrounding yourself or connecting with like-minded women is the opportunity to find an accountability partner. An accountability partner is simply someone who you share your goals with, who knows what you're working on. You guys talk about it. You meet every so often, maybe once a week at the same time, to check in with one another and hold each other accountable to the goals and dreams that you put on the table. This is an invaluable resource that will help you to accelerate your goals, and at the same time, it shortens your learning curve. There's a lot of value that can be exchanged between accountability partners. With that said, if you're looking for a like-minded group of women where you can connect, where you can find that accountability partner, collaborate, get feedback and support, I invite you to join us over in Conscious Women Who Lead, the holistic business mastermind for women on Facebook. This is a free group, and all you have to do to request access is go to rohiniwellness.com/group. So to summarize, we talked about the benefits of sisterhood. We talked about some of the barriers to sisterhood and 4 things that you can do to overcome those barriers, to start cultivating healthy relationships with other women and embrace sisterhood in your life. I want to share with you really quickly a passage from Successful Women Think Differently. This is an amazing book by Valerie Burton, and of course I'll leave a link to that in the show notes for you. And Valerie says, success rarely happens in isolation. When it does, it is less gratifying. Our sense of meaning and purpose is fulfilled in relationship to our impact on others. The most successful women are those who have built positive relationships that form a personal and enduring community of family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors. Wow, I absolutely love that quote because it really captures the value in sisterhood, not just for yourself, but for others through your impact. I also want to share with you really quickly a quote by Isadora James. A sister is a gift to the heart, a friend to the spirit, a golden thread to the meaning of life. So beautiful. I definitely hope that you got value from today's episode and that you will take this information, share it with some women in your network on social media using #YesToYou, and start prioritizing, cultivating beautiful relationships with other women. Who knows the amazing things and collaborations that will come out of that? I look forward also to hearing more about your journey. Make sure that you tune in next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time for episode 11 because we'll be talking about how to overcome procrastination. Yes, that thing that cheats so many brilliant women out of actualizing their greatest potential. So don't miss out on that episode. We are going to crush procrastination. In the meantime, remember, you get to choose how you show up in life. Love yourself fiercely, own your story, and say yes to your calling. It was a pleasure to have you join us for this episode of the Yes to You podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to visit rohiniwellness.com/vision to download my free PDF starter guide, the Create Your Vision Workbook. If this episode was helpful for you, please leave us a review on iTunes. Also, when you share this episode on social media using #YesToYou, we'll give you a shout out on a future episode. We look forward to inspiring you next time, right here on the Yes to You podcast.